looks like we've got a good turnout this morning, and it's 10 a.m. So we're going to give our greetings to everyone who's on the call this morning. Great to see such a good number of folks. Today we're fortunate to have Jack Wood joining us for some talk on maintenance of your RV. And of course, Jack is well known to most of us on the forum as the man who resolved the window issue in terms of the side windows at the back, the fold-out windows that some people have lost and had broken. And Jack was tenacious and organized getting plexiglass windows and brackets made. So I'm sure he'll tell us about that and other window issues. But Jack is becoming known as the handyman of road treks. So I told Jack he could share some tips of what he sees on the road check he helps work on in terms of what are the maintenance and operational items that he sees being neglected. And plus, of course, we'll have any open discussion on issues of dealing with road treks. So Jack, I believe, is in Utah. I know he does a lot in the automotive field, detailing and repairing. And I think he's on the road today, but he graciously joined us from wherever he happens to be. I'm sure he'll tell us. So, Jack, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your knowledge and experience with us. And we'll just turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm currently on the road. Actually took a flight down to, left Utah and took a flight down to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Yes, the borders are closed, but when you fly, you actually can fly down here, and it's pretty safe. It's a pretty horrible view right now, but I just want to kind of, thank you for inviting me. Thanks for having me on the Zoom meeting this morning. It's great to join. Last year, I bought a Roadtrek 2002 Versatile 190V, and that has been quite a journey. I've loved every single minute of it. It's been awesome. Our kids love it. My wife loves it. She's kind of excited to have an RV. It's just everyone knows. I mean, having your RV like ready to go at a moment's notice is kind of fun. You don't have to worry about bringing everything. Just bring your clothes and you're ready to go. But yeah, back in January, I took a trip down to Quartzsite, Arizona, and when I went to shut my window, my rear window, my C.R. Lawrence frameless window, as I was shutting it, I was turning the dial, and it just fell right off the track and broke into a million pieces. And hopped on the vintage Roadtrek site, a couple other sites, and Facebook page, and just was searching. Is there a solution for this? Is there anyone nearby? And I talked to the people in Quartzsite at the window replacement places. They're like, no, you're gonna have to have a window cut out. You're gonna have to have plexiglass cut out. And you're not gonna be able to use your window. And I'm like, these windows are so valuable. You have to have these windows, especially in the back, to have that airflow, to be comfortable while sleeping, so you don't have to have the air conditioner on. So that's when, I started kind of thinking about what to do with the windows. And when I got back to Utah, we have some pretty good manufacturing plants, and we have a plastic company out there that actually my friend owns, and we started working together on creating a solution. And we came up with the plexiglass. That's actually like a CNC kind of cut on one of their plastic machines. Some they can cut by hand, but these are pre-drilled, and they're 40 times more impact resistant than the factory glass. So they're pre-drilled with 4 holes. And we have the upper brackets, and then we have the lower brackets. So they have 4 points of contact. And I've even tested them out on the road, driving up to about 70 miles an hour with my windows open, no issues, no flex, no cracks. I think I have obviously the longest one on my Roadtrek. It's been on there for now going about close to 10 months. But it did take me kind of a little, bumps and stuff to kind of figure out what brackets and what, will actually work. And I've noticed that a lot of people have missing lower brackets or the wheel slide through. And, contacting a few window manufacturers that actually supply C.R. Lawrence parts, they're probably worth their weight in gold, because 2 of those brackets are about $116 for 2. I did find an actual a casement window fitting that actually we can cut down and you can buy them on Amazon. I can share that link with everyone. It's kind of hard to find. Their inventory is not the greatest, but it's like $13 for one piece, and you can cut out 5 different brackets. So up to 5 different brackets, maybe 6, depending on the length. So that can save people a lot of money by doing that, where you don't have to actually pay 116 just for 2 brackets. It's also for safety as well, for these windows, and also for people who are in hotter climates to make sure that the air is great to flow in your road trek. As far as like any of the maintenance items, anything that I have seen, had a lot of road treks that have had issues with clogged water lines, the PEX lines, the Quest lines, a lot of black water, a lot of maintenance people haven't really done properly in some of these road treks that buy them and then they don't worry about even fixing them, or flushing out their water tank and then changing out the rod. I had one of them not too long ago that had just completely stinky black water. I don't know if anyone have ever had that before, but while I was in the process of cleaning one of the lines, the shower inside, I got black water all over myself, got it all over. I had a bucket, but it was it was kind of a surprise. I didn't know that some of these could actually have that. Sorry, I needed to mute my phone there. Other than that, I've worked on a 94 Chevy 190, and the heater wasn't working, the fridge wasn't working. I think it's kind of important to make sure that we all look at the grounds to a lot of our things. This customer had 2 other different RV companies actually look at their heater and the Suburban heater, and they said that they just needed to replace the whole thing. But it was actually a ground that was on the side of the van, down lower on the rear of the van, and that ground was actually corroded. And the ground, there maybe got some water in there from the window or whatever, and I was able to move the ground, and then also some of the connections on the actual switch to turn the heater on. That was actually kind of corroded as well. It's as simple as just taking the actual housing off and then scratching the kind of the copper and getting some of that oxidation off. After I did that, did some testing, and I was able to fire up the furnace pretty quickly. So it really wasn't, I didn't have to put anything extra into it. We just had to use just one little different connection for the wire. Other than that, I had other issues with igniters. The igniters they were separated too far apart. So if those igniters are too far apart, they have a hard time creating a proper spark to ignite. So it was a 5-minute fix on another furnace, and it saved one of my customers quite a bit of money because they thought they had to replace the furnace. And then we can go into fridges, but fridges, we all know, are kind of a nightmare when you have problems with them. A lot of labor, a lot of time, but it is proper maintenance to actually make sure that everything is clear on the flume and make sure that there's no blockage, so you're not ruining your fridge. But yeah, if anyone has any questions on my windows, I know there's a lot of information on the Roadtrek pages. You guys can hit me up. I can share my phone number with everyone and my email. We can get that out to everyone. And I'll be in Mexico for a week, but we were supposed to come out here in June. We decided let's just get out and go before they might close the borders down again for flying. So here we are in Mexico. Did leave the kids behind, but they're okay. They'll be fine.
Okay, great. Any questions on the windows before we go on to other things?
Yeah, I was wondering about the 3 windows on the top that are fixed glass. How can you reseal them?
There's a pretty good write-up on that. I know Red Rick Rover has a pretty good write-up on how to seal that up on his site. I know if you just search, he has his own site. I think it's redrickrover.com. There's Mobile Life in Canada. Mobile Life in Canada, it's Chris. He's the Roadtrek part guru up there. He worked for Roadtrek for 21 years. We have had some pretty good conversations about the windows, and he knows everything about them, from what years they kind of started out, using the plexiglass and then go into the glass, and then some of them are kind of curved. He has some pretty good tips on how to do that. I actually do need to do my windows. I need to pull mine out, and mine are the tempered glass windows. When I do pull them out, I am going to make some plexiglass replacements that are smoked. A lot of people ask me why I use plexiglass. It's the same material they use in World War II on the bombers. So the plexiglass is the same plexiglass they have on some of those still that are around. Plexiglass, there's Lexan, but Lexan fades over time and it kind of can crack as well. But coat around the edges, outside, that doesn't really seal it because there's an inner seal that you really need to go in and actually replace. Other people have been successful at just using other automotive replacement gaskets, but I know that Mobileye, they have a pretty good solution right now, and they have a lot of things that really aren't on the site. So if you give them a call, they can help you out with some of those gaskets that it really should be used properly. And I don't know, Redrick Rover, he has a pretty good write-up on how to do that as well.
Go ahead.
I saw that someone actually asked where I was located. Based out of Salt Lake City, Utah. I've had people come out all the way from Florida, Vegas, Idaho, but yeah, I have a YouTube video to kind of show how to actually install the video. So if you have a few kind of basic tools, a drill, you actually can do it yourself.
Anyway, I'm just looking at the chat here from Ann. You can see the comment if you want to connect with her. She said she's removing her propane stove and furnace if anyone is interested. Then I got another one here is Linda Wilcox is asking, where is the ground for the fridge? Is there a ground on the fridge, Jack, do you know?
Yeah, there should be a ground on the fridge. It really depends on the model. I can look at the schematics and I can figure it out. If you send me which model you have or which year you have Roadtrek, I can figure out which one it is and kind of point in the right direction.
Okay, and maybe Jack, when you get a second or two, you can type your email and your phone number into the chat box so people can contact you directly offline if necessary.
Yeah, for sure.
The next one is from Gary. I found the fridge ground at the lower outside vent. Look at the DC wire connections. So maybe we've got the answer there. It's in the chat.
There is one that I do that I have seen that one on a '94 Chevy, and that one was pretty corroded. I had to take that one off and actually re-ground it because it didn't seem like it was working, and then actually turn the fridge back on. So I did forget about that one, but yeah, that's out there on the outside vent.
Okay. Darla's asking, she missed the discussion on the windows. Yes, it's going to be recorded, and I will attempt to post it onto the forum so you can see there what Jack was explaining for the side windows. And yeah, Linda's got a 2002 Dodge 190 Popular. So we did touch briefly on fridges. Any other questions with regard to refrigerators, operation or maintenance? Okay, we did touch briefly on the hot water heaters. Anybody got any more questions on hot water heaters? Okay, so I'm going to ask Frank to share with his experience with his situation. You may recall in a prior session, he had some propane problems. And before we started the meeting, he was sharing that he got it resolved. So Frank, do you want to just share with the group what you did to resolve your propane problem?
Sure. What was the main switch in the propane stove? The
regulator?
Yes, I had the regulator replaced inside because propane was leaking into the unit even after it was shut off outside or by the controls. It was still coming in. So he replaced the regulator, but then the stove, he said, had to be replaced because the one burner, we couldn't control it. And when I got it back home, took it apart that one burner, and I noticed there was a moth had went inside the tube, and they built their little web. It's white, you can see it. And the only way you can get it out is either with a little brush, or I had a piece of copper ground wire went in, hooked it, and brought it back out. And the propane soap works beautiful now. Had it back out, had it checked, everything's good that way.
Underneath.
And underneath, I had the propane tank and fittings all checked down there. There was a hose that has to be replaced on the bypass. When they fill the tank, it had went bad, but the tank was good, it passed. So he said some of these things for your own safety, especially propane leaking inside, to have it checked. Maybe he suggested every 5 years as the units get older. And the cost isn't really that great, but it's for your own safety. Otherwise, you're sleeping in it when the propane is leaking, even though it's turned off.
Okay, interesting. Thanks for sharing your experiences there. All righty, I guess we're on to other topics. Does anybody have any questions from Jack? By the way, Jack has put his email and phone in the chat, so anybody who wants to reach out to him directly can do so after the call. Maybe don't bother when he's in Mexico, but otherwise next week he'll be back. So any other maintenance or operation questions? Okay, Jack, we'll turn it back to you. Are you running into things that you see on units that people could avoid if they gave better maintenance and operational care to their units?
It's kind of the altitude setting on the generator. A lot of people that I've had in Utah, we live at the higher elevation. If you have your elevation setting, depending on what model you have, sometimes you on Dodge or on Chevy, you might have it on the rear driver's side quarter panel. That's how you access that. On a lot of the Dodge, like popular versatile, like you'll have them on the rear, underneath the vehicle. It's the altitude setting kind of causes a lot of problems when people kind of go a little higher. They think their generator's surging, or it's not working properly, or it's kind of making that kind of up and down noise cycling. I just found that the simple thing to do is just check your altitude setting. It goes from like sea level, I think, to like 1,000 and 2,000 feet to 5,000 and all the way up to 8,000 feet. For me in Utah, I like to keep it around the 5,000 foot level, and I haven't had any issues going up as high as 11,000 feet. I've had them adjusted a couple of times at 11,000 feet, but it still works pretty well. The kind of main thing is, of course, a lot of people use seafoam, and especially if you're going to be storing your vehicle during the winter months, is to try to disconnect your fuel line to your generator and make sure that all that fuel is out of your generator, so it's just not sitting there. Or use some seafoam in your tank to store. That's kind of important this time of year. And obviously taking your rod out and flushing out your water tank, your water heater, and then either replacing the rod with a new one or replacing that in the springtime. But then if you don't have any valves on your water tank, on your water heater to divert the water, then I would suggest getting some valves installed. Some of the Roadtreks I've worked on have had maybe just one valve. It's kind of important, I think, to have two. I have two on mine. So I like to take out the rod and then flush out the whole thing with the actual tool that hooks up to your hose. And it's a plastic wand that goes inside that really does flush out a lot of stuff that prevents that from getting inside your water system. So kind of the things to kind of look at right now this time of year. I know that on my Dodge, I was having some issues with performance-wise. So I did a full tune-up, and I did the cap, rotor, spark plugs, and wires, and that made a tremendous difference on the timing, like everything on the firing. So I'm getting better gas mileage. So that's a good thing to do, even before you store it for winter if you have time. It's kind of a pain, but it's worth it.
Okay, Any comments or questions on from what Jack has just shared with us? Just push your space bar and speak up if you do.
Calling it now.
I was told by Don's trailer that every third tank of gas I put in high test, it'll stop the generator from surging. So that, and I also heard sea foam.
Yeah, from my experience, seafoam works good, but what keeps mine from surging is just using it, continual use, and exercising at minimum every 6 weeks seems to avoid surging on my unit. And even if it does start surging, if I load it up and run it for half an hour, it just purrs like a kitten after that. It just seems to need those slip rings exercised on a regular basis, and that's what's worked well for me. Any other discussion on generators? Okay, I'll go back to the chat here. I've got a chat from Jane. Jane, I didn't see your question, rehouse batteries, but that doesn't mean I didn't get it, but I've been very busy, so I'm not sure how you sent it. But anyway, Jane is asking about winter storage and her batteries, and that's the first part of her question. And she's asking about whether we'll have discussion on winterizing, and we can have that discussion because it's timely given the time of year. So any thoughts on house battery care during winter storage, Jack?
It just depends on where you are in the climate. If you have a maintenance-free battery, I have an AGM battery. In Utah, we get temperatures, down to single digits Fahrenheit, sometimes a little bit below maybe. But I'm about the 5,000 foot level. I had a different battery in there last year, and that battery, was okay. But I think the cold really does have an effect on the batteries. A lot of people, they take the batteries out if you're going to leave them, outside. With my AGM battery, I will take it inside, with me. But just don't store your battery on concrete. If you store it on concrete, that actually will drain your battery and actually ruin it if you don't, have a proper charge on it. And then, every now and then you can leave a trickle charger on it. Or for me, if I have it in the basement, it's not too cold downstairs, I'll take it in the garage and then I'll just kind of cycle it. Maybe once a month, I'll just kind of give it a nice little charge with a 2.5 amp charger. I don't really put any big load on it or anything like that. And then if you do want to, start your generator, if you do, take it for a drive, then you would have to hook up the battery. I believe to get that, depending on which vehicle model you have.
May I ask the question? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
It's Jane. I was questioning the house batteries. I have the deep cell sealed batteries, and I was going to store it at a friend's place up on Lake Simcoe where it goes to -30. And I was wondering if I needed to take the house batteries out and store them.
I think, going to -30, I think that would be a good idea. Even your battery, not using that, if you're going to store it, you're not going to cycle it, turn the engine on or anything like that. It would be a good idea to take both batteries out, the one in the front and the house battery, especially at that temperature, if you're not going to have any type of heater, and if it's inside of a garage. But if it's going to get -30, that heat and temperature, cold, that kills batteries, especially in the hot summer months. I've had a lot of issues just with normal cars, just in Utah, and then you get down to that cold, freezing temperatures, and that just where your batteries really lose performance. But yeah, it would be a good idea.
My friend was going to start the engine up every couple of weeks and run it for 15 minutes or so. But okay. I wondered if that was okay, or if it was still better to remove them.
It depends on if he's going to cycle the generator too. If he cycles the generator, maybe then he can have a different battery to take with him out there, or a jumper box to kind of to start the generator. If he's going to cycle that. If he takes the house battery out, then I think it would be might be difficult to start that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Jane, just for your information, I've on my 2000 Versatile and before that a 90 Versatile, I never took either battery out. I'm in Ontario as well. I wouldn't say we get to -30, but we get damn cold. And I very faithfully run my unit, usually at least once a month. I leave the batteries in. It's stored in a garage, but it's not a heated garage. I've never had any trouble as long as I run it once a month, and I try and take it for a drive for half an hour or so if I can. I also exercise the generator. So if you got somebody who's going to run that every couple of weeks, then I don't think that's as much of an issue, but I wouldn't want to leave it there all winter without running it. And as Jack said, it's always better to put them in the basement on usually a plank or something, not on concrete, as Jack said. So
someone did mention about starting that at -30. That is a good point. Starting a generator at -30 would never be a good idea. I've ever had experience that cold of temperatures. I mean, I've started mine at like 15 degrees, 20 degrees without issue. But yeah, having that pretty cold. In Utah, we have ethanol, 10% ethanol fuel. I wanted to bring that up. I forgot to mention it. If you have an area where you have ethanol fuel, a lot of these systems were never designed to be used with ethanol in the gasoline. I know in Utah, we just started using it in 2011, and I had an older vehicle that started causing issues with evap systems, with charcoal canisters. I mean, it started breaking down a lot of things because the ethanol will just eat at things, and that eats also, two-stroke engines or your lawnmower stuff. So if you can find a place where if you have ethanol gas that's in there, 10%, try to get ethanol-free gas to store it for the wintertime. That's one thing that I'm going to be doing on my road trek. And then also putting the seafoam in there is key.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jack. Okay, we've got a comment here from Craig Jones. Craig, if you just want to push your space bar, and you can come on and ask your question in person if you wish with regard to air conditioning. And Craig says he's got a 2006 210 Popular. So if you're there, Craig, just feel free to push your space bar and you can ask your question.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so we have been unable to get the air conditioner to cool this year. It will blow hot air just great, but we can't get it to cool. Any tips on that?
Yeah, I had kind of the same issue last year with mine, and I had the old Fetters unit. I think you have the Cool Cat in yours maybe, but in my Fetters unit, it had the 8,000 BTU unit, and I think it was the hard stop capacitor that was actually going bad on it. It would sometimes work, sometimes it wouldn't work. It would just blow hot air, or if you ran it for 10 minutes, you turn it off, but it wouldn't turn back on. So it's really intermittent. So on mine, it's really hard to service those. It's hard to service them when they're inside. I just took mine out and I put just a kind of a generic GE unit. I know a lot of people go with the LG air conditioner, but I went with a little bit lower capacity. I'm in Utah, so we have a dry, dry heat. And so if you're in a humid climate, that also makes those units work really, really hard. So I just went with the 5,000 BTU unit, which is 500 watts. So if I did up my solar capacity and have a bigger array, I might be able to run my whole solar, my air conditioner off solar. But as far as with yours, I mean, it could be an issue with, the Freon might not be there anymore. Your hard stop capacitor is just not going to kick on the compressor. I could do a little digging around on those, but I know if you did maybe search on the on the Chevy Roadtrek page, I think that one might kind of point in the right direction if you just kind of search. Maybe someone had that same issue, but a lot of times we just have to take them out and put a new one in.
I think the other thing, Craig, is make sure that your coils aren't plugged up with dust and dirt. Some people report dust blowing in the back if they're into a sandstorm or something. So just make sure that your evaporator and condenser coils aren't plugged up with dust or dirt.
That's a good point.
Okay, we have Anne made a comment that she's in London, Ontario, has an 87 Dodge 190 Versatile. She just got it this summer. Would be great to find someone in the area to talk with. Well, if you want to connect with me, I'm just down the road about 40 minutes in Woodstock, and I have a 2000 Versatile now, but I did have a 1990 for several years. So if you want to connect with me, and I'll put my email in the chat box here, and we can arrange if you want to chat either online, or if you want to take a drive down to Woodstock, we can have a discussion over coffee if you wish. Any particular questions you have, Ann, now that we might want to deal with on this call? If so, just feel free to push your space bar and speak up. In the meantime, Darla has made a comment, and she's wondering if anybody has any British Columbia connections who do glass repairs. She's got some leaks in a 2008 Dodge Adventurous. Don't know if anybody on here would have a connection, Darla, but I'm suggesting if you reach out on the forums, you might get a connection on the Roadtrek Canada site. Would be a good one. Road RV Lifestyles might also be another one to connect on, or the 74 group as well. Anybody have any connections in BC they want to share? Okay. Next one is a question from Craig. How do we know that our house batteries are getting to the end of their lives? Go ahead on that, Jack. And if you want to chime in, Craig, in person, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of simple. Just kind of look at your gauges, and kind of see if you're always going into the if you're in the G range, good range. There's the charge range, C at the top. But if you're always dipping down and you're just going below the the good, and you're in the kind of the orange red, depending on what sensors you have, that's kind of an indication that if you're driving around and you haven't really used your battery that often, you're not using anything really, you're just using a couple lights, that's kind of an indication your battery might be kind of on its end of life. If you put it on charger and charge it, if you're always at that 25% or lower when it starts charging, depending on what kind of charger you have, that also is an indication. But a lot of the new smart chargers will actually kind of bring those kind of back to life, and they'll actually let you know if your battery needs repair. Then you also can have it checked at AutoZone. They can do a load test on those things as well, or O'Reilly's, or if you have any auto parts store, they have those batteries. They can do the one at the front. And they also can do the battery, depending on where your battery location is for your house battery. They can see if any of your cells are dead. And then another simple test is hooking up your just a battery tester, voltmeter, and if it's anywhere below like 10 volts or like 9 volts, then you might have a cell that's actually bad. And then also, if you have a maintenance battery, then you also need to make sure that you have the distilled water that's in there. Make sure that's topped off.
Yeah, we have the distilled water batteries.
Hopefully
As far as we know, they're the original batteries, but they seem to be holding up well. They still take a charge, and they don't drain very quickly. So that suggests that they're not coming to the end of their life. But I like the idea of stopping in at a car parts store and asking them to test it. That's really easy to do. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and then the best place to kind of get batteries, I think, Costco has a really good value on some of the batteries that they have. The Group 27, whatever group battery yours has. But if it is the stock batteries, I mean, that's pretty long life on batteries. Usually when you're using these batteries quite a bit, they take a beating, especially on the maintenance batteries. AGM batteries, they'll take a beating on them. Even lithium ion batteries, I know those are very expensive, but they really only have like a 1,000, maybe 2,000 cycle life on those. If you ever wanted to upgrade, you can look into lithium iron phosphate. Those have a They're pretty expensive, but they will last a long time. There's some that are rated, 5 years plus, but you can actually go really low down on the wattage. But if you did that, they're going to have to probably go with a different, charge controller and all that other stuff. That's kind of this one of the things I'm looking into. But if you guys are all up north, you have to be careful with going and upgrading batteries, because if you go with a lot of those, the cold really zaps those lithium ion, and you have to have battery heaters and all the other stuff. So just going with the maintenance-free battery, if you're going to upgrade, I would recommend an AGM, for your guys' climate up north.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Gary made a comment that he wouldn't try starting a Jenny at minus 30 degrees. Do you want to just expound on that further, Gary?
There we go. Hopefully I can be heard now. Yeah, at minus 30, it's like trying to take your summer lawnmower and getting it started. And the bottom line is the carburetors are adjusted for relatively warm temperatures. And so the mixture is simply not rich enough, and there is no manual choke to allow you to enrich in it. So the overwhelming odds are at minus 30, it simply won't start. It doesn't matter how long you crank it. If you would put some quick start, which is basically an ethanol, into the intake, you could probably get it to fire. But much like your lawnmower, which sits all winter and is quite fine sitting all winter, that's the way in which I use my generator. I usually run a bunch of seafoam through it in the late fall, and I literally don't touch it till spring, because starting a generator when it's extremely cold is very difficult. It's hard on the starter, it's hard on the motor as well, because the oil's very cold. If you're using single weight oil, which many people do, that oil is almost like gel at those kind of temperatures. So yeah, in Utah at 15 or 20 degrees Fahrenheit, that's the equivalent of about minus 5 Celsius for us Canadians, maybe minus 7. Even at that temperature, I'm a little hesitant. But once you get down into the 0 Celsius, like minus 18 Fahrenheit, I wouldn't touch it. Just leave it alone and let it hibernate until temperatures come up a bit. Of course, all of that's irrelevant if you're storing your rig in a warm, heated garage. That's a whole different issue. But mine sits on the driveway all winter, and so it just gets cold soaked. Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, that's I totally agree with that. I mean, that's I went to college up in Idaho, and I was in the Arctic tundra up there. Not quite what you guys experienced in weather, but it was still like negative 30, and I had a carbureted vehicle. It was an 84. Same thing with that, starting that thing in that cold temperature, but it just flooded the engine. It wouldn't start. The ratio, the air fuel mixture just wasn't right, and that's even for a car. It has a hard time starting to that. So yeah, all good points.
Could I have a question? Could I ask a question, Doug? Is the seafoam similar to adding a fuel stabilizer? Is that what seafoam is?
Yes, yeah, and the Canadian Tire had it on sale. I'm not sure if it's still on sale this week or whether it was last week, but it's
still on sale.
Is it? Yeah, I think it's $12. Is it $12 a can, something like that?
Yep.
Yeah. So when I usually get my gas tank down to about a third to a quarter, then I dump a can in it and drive around to mix it up a bit, and then I make sure I run my generator with that. Like Gary suggested, make sure your generator gets a good dose of it over the winter.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add one other thing regarding seafoam, Walmart typically has it for a can, $6.97, I believe, in the States.
Wow.
As well as Advanced Auto Parts. You can buy, I think it's like a gallon for a lot less. Just fill it up, but it's a good price there.
Oh, that's good to know for those folks in the US who have the cheaper prices. We gotta add 25% on the money for us in Canada. Go ahead, Greg. And
We've got a regular auto shop here in Kingston that sells seafoam every day at $9.99 Canadian.
wow.
So if you're coming through Kingston, it's not far off the 401.
What brand is it?
It's seafoam.
No, but what store, what brand is the store? Is it like just a small store or is it an auto chain store?
No, it's not a big auto chain. It's a small store called the Auto Place or something. It's right at the corner of Portsmouth and Princess.
Wow,
Far off the 401, but it's $9.99. That's their everyday price,
good.
which
Good
is
to know.
cheaper than buying it in the US.
So maybe we just got to check our local auto store then.
Yeah. I'll look up the name and I'll post it here.
Okay. So any other questions before we let Jack continue? Jack, you got any other operation and maintenance tips for these folks?
Yeah, I think we kind of covered a lot of the basis. I think, a lot of people are, I'm not sure if you guys have any issues with like critters and parking in fields and stuff like that up north, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of some things we have to kind of consider down, further down here. But I like to kind of keep my road trek kind of available because I have, different times of the year. Like in January, I'm going to be going to Quartzsite. So I'll be in Quartzsite, Arizona for a whole month. Down there, I'll be detailing, working on windows, just working on road treks. We have a lot of people are going to be meeting me down there. So if anyone wants to, hopefully the border is open. I don't really see some of that kind of opening, in the winter months. But if anyone's in the States, yeah, I will be down in Arizona. Kind of one thing about winterizing on mine, I kind of like to keep my freshwater system without any antifreeze or any RV antifreeze in there. I got a Schrader valve connection to the city water, and I don't use a high pressure hose for the airline, but I actually blow out all the water out of my road trek. That's kind of been successful the last I've done it. Had to winterize it 3 times, I think, last winter, because every time that I come back to Utah, I have to actually blow out the lines. But I do that in southern Utah before I head up north. But blowing out the lines, you just have to be careful. If you have too high pressure, you can blow some valves, maybe your pump for your toilet. Some of those valves, when they get kind of old, they can't really handle a lot of that air pressure. But if you have someone helping you, they can open up any of those things inside as you actually put air into the system. It'll blow out all the water for the most part. I haven't had any issues. I think Quest lines might have more of a problem on the older, but the PEX line, which I have in my road trek, I haven't had any issues with any of that.
Jack, question is, how do you blow out the lines? I know you talked about a little air connection that goes on the water intake down in the storage cupboard. Do you just have like a hand pump in, or?
No, you can just use a normal. You kind of want to set your regulator. You don't want to go like to an automotive, like repair shop or Grease Funky or Jiffy Lube or anything like that, because they have a really high pressure. You probably want to run like 30 psi or 50 psi maybe, and just regulate that. But there is an actual Schrader valve connection that is a hose to a Schrader valve, meaning like your bicycle tire, your tire to your car, and you just hook that to your city valve, and then you actually open your city valve, and then you can blow out all the water out of your lines, kind of going one by one, or you can open them all at the same time if you don't really have anyone helping you. But the main thing is kind of be careful with your toilet, because there's that little tiny small valve in there that it actually can break if you use too much air pressure. But you want to remove your anode rod out of your water tank, and then flush that out, and then that's when you would want to connect up. I don't turn off my valves actually on my water tank. I just open it up and let all the water out, and then I go around and just flush everything out with the air. And I haven't had any issues with any freezing in mine. But then again, I'm only in Utah. I don't get as cold, because a lot of times we get above freezing during the day.
So Jack, the question though is, what is the source of the air pressure? Is it a hand pump, or is it one of those little inflator pumps that you can hook on there. We know that a service station hose would be too much air pressure. So what is the source of the air that you recommend?
I just have like one of those little small 2.5 gallon little air compressors. So then you can just fill that up. And you know it up pretty high, or you can have it kind of medium pressure. It doesn't really take a whole lot to kind of blow out the lines. But you can use that. Bicycle pump wouldn't really work. It doesn't have enough. You can go to maybe a lower pressure. You can actually check the pressure that's coming out if you had a gauge. But yeah, just using one of the small pancake type air compressors that you can just get at automotive stores or Walmart or Amazon. Those work pretty well. You might have to cycle it quite a few times because a lot of those things don't really hold a lot of air, but at least you can modulate the pressure.
Okay, and then the second question, which you partially answered, and that is, do you open one tap and one valve at a time and blow them out individually, or can you just open everything up and blow it all at once?
At first I do one at a time, and that seemed to work pretty well. I kind of worked the higher. I worked higher lines, and then I kind of worked my way down. You can open up your line, your shower, outside shower. That's your lowest point you're going to have on your water system, besides your your drain valve on your water tank. And yeah, you just open up one at a time. But it helps to have someone there kind of with you, because you don't want to be running all that air through as you're going inside and open another valve and shutting it. But I've only done it the method of just kind of one at a time. And then at the end, everything's all open, kind of give it one more blast, and you can definitely tell when there's air coming out of even the hot water tank. So when you have the anoid rod open and out, just be sure to put that rod back in.
Yep.
I just like it. I don't have to worry about using the RV antifreeze and having to flush that out, because I will be using my RV in the wintertime going south.
Okay, just a caveat though, you still do need to put some antifreeze down the traps of the kitchen sink and the shower trap, and maybe even a little bit down the toilet. So you do need a little antifreeze in your drain traps. We had another comment here about the Schrader valve being smaller than the city water, but the Schrader valve, for those who don't understand what Jack's talking about, is one side of it screws into the garden hose fitting on the city intake, and then the other end of it is like the spout of a tire where you fill the air pressure into your tire. So it's like a little adapter so that you can hook an air hose up, and that puts air pressure in through your city intake. The other thing, I believe you mentioned, Jack, was you have to make sure you open that valve at the city water intake so it just doesn't blow air into the fresh water tank. Did we lose Jack?
Sorry, there we go. I'm back. Yeah, that's correct. You have to make sure that's open. And then one thing to kind of mention though on that, it is kind of a pain to actually get your water pump to actually pressurize your water pump, prime it. That's, if you don't really have a prime kit, it can be kind of difficult to get that that primed again. So a lot of people like to use the RV antifreeze. They don't have to worry about priming it, because when I don't know if anyone's really experienced not having water in your system, but I kind of experienced the hard way when I was in Quartzsite, Arizona, when I drove all the way down there, and then I finally filled up my fresh water tank in January, and I'm like, I didn't have really anything to actually prime my pump. It took me a while to kind of get it primed. What I did is I took my shower hose off and I connected to the input of the water pump. I disconnected that water line and then connected my hose up to it, and I was able to force water in there and primed it. I don't know if anyone else has another trick. I probably do need to get a kit put in there, but that's one thing I will be installing on mine.
One of the things, you couldn't do that at Quartzsite very easy, but what I have found if I had trouble priming is I just hook a water hose up from my house to the city inlet, and I pressurize the system with my house water system, and that seems to get my pump primed. But if you're in the desert in Quartzsite, you don't have that.
There is a drill pump that I bought. It's an attachment to your drill, and it's just a little tiny pump, and it'll actually, if you have a 5-gallon water tank or a 5-gallon bucket or whatever you have, you can stick a short garden hose there, whatever, and then you actually have that hooked up to your city water connection. And if you have the drill, your drill would actually pump water into that, and that should be able to prime it. I haven't tried it yet. I'm going to try it when I'm in Quartzsite in January. So I bought it on Amazon. I believe it was like $12. Pretty simple device.
Okay, good. There was a question, where do we buy those Schrader adapter valves? Gary's already answered it very well. Any camping store or, generally they're not that hard to find. RV store, camp store, possibly Walmart. Canadian Tire has it, according to Gary. So they're readily available. There's different varieties and different prices of them. So, okay, any other questions on winterizing? We're getting close to the hour, so we've still got a chance for a few more questions if there are any. Anything else, Jack, you want to cover? Otherwise, we'll cut you loose to go to the beach.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm ready to go to the beach, ready to go snorkeling. Sorry I'm here in Mexico. We were supposed to be here in June, but we just had to come. We had to get away from everything, and Mexico has less cases than just, all of Mexico has less cases than Texas, so it's actually pretty safe to kind of come down here. But we're just going to kind of just quarantine to our resort and not really go anywhere, just stay here and just stay at the beach. But I appreciate you guys having me. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Okay, any parting comments before we let Jack go? Well, thank you so much, Jack, for sharing your time with us and your experience. And we appreciate your feedback, both here and also online, because I know many people have questions, and you're very good at sharing your experience and your knowledge. And so great to have you on, and we'll hopefully see you again in a couple of weeks. So feel free to go and look after the rest of your family there in Mexico. And we all wish we were with you. So does anybody want to have a general chit chat? Anybody want to go around and introduce themselves, or what is the wishes of the group?
Well, I just want to say thanks for having this, Doug, Vincent. I know you joined the Roadtrek Club some time ago when we were still having rallies. That's what I was a part of, still am. But I'm glad I met you and your wife. But I picked this up through Harish. We were at a rally up in Algonquin recently. And I thank you for doing it. It's fantastic. And every now and then, all of us need some help. So.
Well, great to have you, Jane. For those who may not know, Jane is involved. There's another organization in Ontario called the Ontario Roadtrekkers Group, who, to my knowledge, at least up until now, have not elected to connect via the internet. They have regular rallies, usually every spring and fall, with the exception of the COVID challenges. And but to my knowledge, at least, they're not on the internet, and I've encouraged them to get involved with a Facebook page or a website or something. But maybe with Jane on here, she'll share the word with the other members. And by all means, Jane, please make sure the other members of the Ontario Roadtrek Group are known that they're welcome to join us anytime. We meet every second Saturday morning at 10 a.m. And We post the links on Roadtrek Canada and the 74 to 94 Roadtrek Vintage forums. So anybody's welcome to join us if they're interested in using Roadtreks or the maintenance and operation of Roadtrek. So please pass the word along.
Thank you, I will.
Okay. Any other comments before we go?
I got a quick one. Hi, Doug. Good to see you.
Oh, hey, how you doing?
Hi, everybody. It's this. My name's Samson. I've got one of the newest Roadtreks on the road right now. It's a 2019 210 Popular. But some of you may know, if you're online in the forums, to know that I've had an unfortunate mishap. Well, not a mishap. It happened. Probably a warranty issue, but my water heater caught on fire. So my brand new baby was lit up. And I was making a claim through insurance. Thank goodness that's there. However, some advice from the group I'm looking for is that I reached out to Owasco RV for servicing. That's where I bought the vehicle from. For those of you not familiar, it's just outside of Toronto, east of the city. And we went through insurance and all that. But I don't know, just want to get your feedback on the state of service centers lately, because I've been waiting for them to get back to me. I've been emailing weekly, calling weekly. They initiated the file and actually brought it in, and they started the work with the insurance company. And the insurance company apparently opened the file and everything should be on the way, but they've been MIA for the last month and a half. So since Labor Day, I was expecting to bring it in to have it fixed up. Excuse me, sorry about that. But nothing, not a word from them. So my question is, should I be reaching out to my insurance company to see whether it's possible for me to just take the file to a different service center? I hear Mobile Life out by Kitchener is a good place to go, but I already kind of started the process with Owasco. So out of courtesy to them, I don't know what I owe them in terms of following through on this, but they're not even responding to my voicemails or emails. Any thoughts from the group and the collective mind?
Well, my thoughts are you don't have any obligation to them if they fail to perform. Then you don't have any obligation. It's their derelict of duty. That would be the result of you leaving there. Of course, use your insurance for the extra leverage, and maybe your insurance company could put some pressure on them to smarten up and use their leverage, because you know that they may have other clients who dealt there or may deal there in the future. So they may have a little bit more power to get things going. I mean, you know, having said all that, I mean, I guess we have to be a little bit tolerant of the COVID challenges that they may be facing, but that doesn't mean there's any excuse for not getting back to you and responding in some way. Like when they're not even returning your calls, that to me is not acceptable. I mean, if they were to phone up and say, hey, because of COVID, we're only working with half staff for isolation, that's put us way behind, we're doing winterizing, we're doing this and that, then at least they would be communicating with you and trying to have some sense of customer service. But if they're not even responding, then I don't think you've got any obligation to them at all.
And that's kind of how I feel. I think under normal circumstances, I'd be just dropping in, right, and visiting and say what's going on. But under COVID, I want to be respectful of that. And truth is, they may not have full staff, and I understand that. But I've been dealing with this since July, August, and we're now in October, almost November, and it's not acceptable that they don't even acknowledge that I sent, like, not even a quick email. Thank you for your email. We're backlogged. We'll get back to you. I tried the voicemail, and when you go on their line, I still getting their ads. The frustrating part is you still get their ads on the email, the spam saying, we're open, we're here to serve you, and then they give you their email address, and I email them and I get nothing. So I'm prepared to move. I just know that they started the process with the insurance company. So my question to the team here is, you know, should I go through the insurance company to ask whether I can kind of port the file that they started to a different service center?
Well, that's what I would do, is go to insurance. The other option is to phone Roadtrek in Cambridge and put in a complaint there. That may or may not take you somewhere, because this is pre-takeover issue. So they may or may not want to engage with you on the problem, but you certainly would be within your rights to register a complaint against them if they're still a Roadtrek dealer. May or may not get you anywhere, but I think Roadtrek in Cambridge needs to know that one of their dealers is not performing.
Thanks, Doug. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't unduly burning any bridges by kind of taking my business elsewhere.
Well, the bridge is already broken from what you've told us.
Yeah. Thank you. Good to see you again, and everybody.
Yeah. Any other comments before we close off? Okay, well, thanks for joining us, everyone. Looking for ideas for future meetings, topics, or if you just want to have a chit chat. I thought maybe in a future meeting we could have a go round of mentioning what one or two of our favorite camping spots would be. Maybe one could be a campground and the other one could be a boondocker. So if anybody has any interest in that, we could maybe use that as a topic to share with each other where we've gone, and make a list. I actually have a list, an Excel spreadsheet that I keep of interesting spots that I hear about or learn about, and so that may be a topic for the future. If there's any interest, make some comments. I'll share the video on the forums, and please do give us some feedback as to what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like more of. Any ideas for future presenters or whatnot would be more than welcome. So any parting comments from anyone? If not, then we'll say goodbye. See you in a couple weeks.